Oh, welcome back all. We're now here with Blockstation, providing you with more and more information on 3D's portfolio companies. Blockstation do tokenized IPOs for a range of different companies. We're joined by the CEO, Jai Waterman. Jay, please start by giving us a rough overview of the company, your track record, and how you founded it.
All right, great. So Blockstation, essentially what we do is we provide an end-to-end platform for stock exchanges so that they can support the tokenized listings of different companies. You could just imagine right now in the world where everything is moving towards the blockchain, everything is looking at being tokenized, the stock exchanges being the center of the financial markets need to be able to support that. And so with our technology, they can now do that, but the stock exchange doesn't stand alone. They have their ecosystem of brokers, the depository, they have regulators, they need to support the issuers and the investors. So our platform really encompasses that entire ecosystem, providing all stakeholders with the tools that they need in order to conduct that life cycle of capital markets.
So what sort of brought you to get into that in that space? Have you got experience in the space? How did you end up there?
Yeah, actually, it wasn't exactly planned out the way that I expected. So my other business is a ERP solution, Aliens, and it's really end-to-end solution for running an organization. And I always had plans of, getting partnerships with stock exchanges for the purpose of the largest companies using this ERP solution.
Mhm.
So then Bitcoin comes out, and I started to learn about it back in 2013, 14. And what I realized is that not only was it Bitcoin, but there was all these other crypto assets that were going on to these platforms, these trading platforms.
Mhm.
And because of an experience I had in the past, I realized that these are all securities.
Mhm.
And these can't just be trading, as they feel on any platform. These
Yeah.
organizations are eventually going to get into problems.
Mhm.
And so I said, this is supposed to be on stock exchanges.
Yeah.
And so the plan was to quickly build out a platform that could be utilized for the stock exchange.
Mhm.
And this was back in like 2014.
Mhm.
At the time, I didn't know the depth of the ecosystems and all the different
Yeah. Yeah.
participants. And it was actually Sheldon actually introduced me to one of the first exchanges that we started to work with, where they actually taught me a lot of information in terms of, all the different pieces, all the moving parts, and all the different solutions that we're going to need to build out. And so, we dove in and really the core of building out the solution from the get-go was actually for stock exchanges because of that unique
Mhm.
perspective that we had. While everybody else in the industry was like, blockchain, we don't need stock exchanges, we
Yeah.
don't need brokers.
Mm.
Our approach was, no, let's empower all of these entities
Mm.
with the technology that's going to move them forward.
Yeah. Very, very well answered. I think 2 points leading off to that is in terms of regulation, are you fully regulated, whereas other exchanges, like PancakeSwap, all these sort of smaller exchanges where people might, start a token or whatever. What's the regulation like on your guys' end?
So from our perspective, we're the technology provider. So what we do is we partner with the regulated entity like a stock exchange
Mhm.
so that they can operate because they already have their license to operate
Yeah.
a stock exchange, right? And but still you have to deal with the regulators. So in every region that we go to, the regulators are usually very concerned. Well, how are we going to know who these people are trading if it's anonymous and all these type of things?
Mm-hmm.
But what we do is we go in there, we educate them, we show them how they have more investor protection, more transparency, more controls, and then the regulators love it and they approve the exchange to move forward. And
Yeah.
that's what we just got last year with 4 approvals for 4 of our exchange partners to move forward. The other key thing is most recently, of course, the Bitcoin ETFs got approved.
Mm.
And that in itself, although it's different from, what we're doing essentially, but because you have the aspect of cryptocurrency being associated with stock exchanges, it just drops a lot of the concern with the exchanges and regulators across the world, and it opens up a completely different viewpoint for all these stock exchanges that were kind of on the fence. They all know they're moving towards blockchain, but most of them are kind of like, well, we like blockchain, but we don't like crypto.
Yeah.
Now it's a little bit more balanced. And I
Mm.
think the most important thing for companies that, they want to list, they want to list on the stock exchange, but they want to have all the efficiencies associated with blockchain. With this method, by doing a tokenized IPO and listing on a regulated stock exchange, you
Mhm.
won't run into the problems like what Ripple had run into, where you're issuing securities without a filing,
Mm.
and you won't run into the issues of, well, what's going to happen to Kraken, what's going to happen to Coinbase, because the
Yeah.
SEC is on
Yeah.
top of them
Very
about
good point.
dealing in securities without
Mhm.
appropriate registrations, etc.
Yeah, you're getting lots of contracts basically with the exchanges, and it sounds like, governments are going to obviously approve it and have, which is, where you can really start to see the institutional interest, and then, retail follow after that. Um, you mentioned Sheldon earlier. When did 3D make its investment, and what's your relationship with them?
So they actually came into our seed round back in 2017.
Wow.
So since then, Sheldon and 3D has participated in other follow-on rounds,
Hmm.
been very supportive, both in terms of introductions, advice, as well as capital. So it's a great relationship.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's good, and it's long standing. That's so many years ago as well. I mean, you touched on quite a few of the benefits already. Could you think of any more benefits other than not having to worry about Ripple, Kraken, all the other things with the SEC going on? Any other benefits to a tokenized IPO over a traditional?
Well, I'll say in terms of like, I'll say there's benefits for the different stakeholders, right? So for example, for the stock exchange, they don't have to worry when they partner with Blockstation, they don't have to worry about figuring out how to build out their own solution. Or they
Yeah.
don't have to figure out how to put together 10 different vendors in order to put the whole ecosystem together. They come to Blockstation, we're a one-stop shop. We have all the technology for them and all their partners, including the regulators, and we can really get off and get them up and running really quickly. We
Mm.
also have the training, the education, and all the tools necessary to get them up and running. So this
Mm.
is the advantage for the stock exchange. And they don't have to do, like, for example, last year the Australian Stock Exchange announced that they spent about 7 years, over $150 million, just to fail at building out a piece of what we provide at
Yeah.
Blockstation.
Wow.
So, that kind of capex is not something that a stock exchange should be diving into.
Mm.
They should be doing is utilizing their existing position as
Hmm.
the center of the financial markets, and utilize a platform like Blockstation so that
Technology.
they
Yeah.
can go and take on that market share.
Mhm.
In terms of issuers, we have digitized the entire process of capital markets. So I'll say there's two main reasons why a company usually doesn't want to go public. Number one, the first part in terms of the disclosure and the prospectus is very expensive, it's very onerous. But we've really digitized and streamlined that process to make it a lot easier.
Mhm.
Um, one of the organizations that is in the process of listing right now on one of the exchanges probably reduced their legal costs by about 80%
Mm.
because the process of creating the prospectus is so efficient. Um, Another thing is, in terms of corporate actions are very streamlined when it comes to the blockchain, whether it's a split or consolidation or, a new issuance. These things are all transparent.
Mhm.
This is very important. Like,
Mhm.
as an investor, if I'm investing in a stock, I'm looking at the market cap. That
Mhm.
market cap is usually actually like 3 months old
Yeah.
because it's not including all the new issuances that might have been done to
Very good
employees or
point.
other things.
Hmm. Hmm.
But when it's on the blockchain, it's real time, right?
Yeah.
So there's benefits to all stakeholders.
Hmm.
But I'll tell you what I think is probably going to be the most important and the most impactful, going forward, is that when it comes to the blockchain, you can't cheat the blockchain. Okay. So the concept of the naked short selling, which is destroying a lot of public companies. Companies are excited. They're so happy to go public. They go on the stock market. They've got, 1 million shares outstanding, and suddenly 10 million of their shares are sold.
You're gonna know who
9
it is,
million
yeah.
don't even exist.
You're gonna know who it is. I watch a YouTuber which you might be familiar of called CoffeeZilla, and he exposes when influencers buy and sell securities. And the only reason he can do that is because it's actually transparent on the blockchain. So you're making a very good point that you can know what's going on in real time, which is very, very good. I mean, you touched on and then just going on to another question, which you were already sort of touching on, sounded like it was, in terms of costs, 80% cheaper for some companies to do a tokenized IPO over a traditional. What are the costs associated?
So I mean, that was the legal cost specifically. Okay. So in terms of like the listing fees, they're usually very similar. Keep in mind that our technology is disruptive, but we don't want to be too disruptive that we're turned away. So, for example, the stock exchange is going to maintain usually the similar listing fees of what they would normally charge. It
Right.
varies in different jurisdictions, so it's on an exchange by exchange basis. Um, but where there can be significant cost savings, then the exchange can pass that on. So, for example, dividend distributions. Dividend distributions in a normal exchange for a public company can be a very complex process, and so would most likely only be done on an annual basis because it's also very expensive. But when you have everything tied into one digitized platform and utilizing the blockchain, those dividend distributions can be done in a very seamless way, and then it can be very cost efficient. So, there's efficiencies that can be gained all over the place. And it really depends on the exchange and the brokers where they're going to pass that down to the end users.
So in terms of those costs, you'd still, so an exchange or a company would, for example, still need, to hire a market maker to cover the legal side of, still making sure that they're compliant with all sorts of, regulatory things people need to do on an ordinary exchange.
Definitely, they're going to have to hire their lawyer. They're going to have to get their audited financials. A market maker is not required, but they can hire a market maker if they would like. So definitely, and you're going to have the continuous reporting. So definitely, there is all the compliance aspects that you would expect with a normal regulated stock exchange. The difference is because we've digitized the whole process, we really streamline and automate. For example, the building out of the prospectus, right? I'll, tell you, for example, there was one company, they were building out the prospectus. They were actually doing an RTO. And then there was a delay in terms of the negotiations with the shell company. And so during that delay, they did a quick private placement to top up their cap table. And then they go to the lawyers and they say, look, our cap tables changed, please update, the documents. That's another like 40 hours of work. And there's another big bill. In our platform, they would update that cap table. It would automatically percolate through the entire prospectus and the work is done. So what you would normally have to spend in terms of legal fees for them to, make sure everything is changed everywhere can be done in a very streamlined and automated way with our platform.
How many companies and exchanges have you got signed up? I mean, just before we hit record, you were saying about last week there was too many to that are coming all in one go, and that's why we've had to delay this call. But tell us about some agreements you have in place with some of the exchanges.
Yeah, so we've got 5 master agreements in place with stock exchange and marketplaces. So our first master agreement was actually the Jamaica Stock Exchange. And they put us through a long, grueling 1-year pilot in order to make sure that everything was tip-top shape. That actually matured our system though. This was back in 2018-19. After that, we were able to secure agreements with the Barbados Stock Exchange, Eastern Caribbean Securities Exchange, and the NESD in Nigeria. Now, I'll just touch on Nigeria for a moment because it's such a massive market
Mm.
in terms of what we're doing. Is Nigeria, first of all, is the biggest economy in Africa.
Hmm.
It's a huge emerging market. It's probably going to be, looked at as a developed market or one of the top 5 markets in the world over the next 10, 15 years is what is estimated.
Mm.
You've got these huge opportunities. And for example, with real estate, there's a shortage of 28 million homes. It's
Mm.
28 million homes that have to be built, and they need to come up with a way to make them affordable. Well, how can you make all those homes affordable? How can you make these people all become homeowners?
Hmm.
There's only one way from my perspective, and you're going to have to do a fractionalized program.
Yeah.
So when we tokenize those properties so that they can have fractional ownership, they can first start off by owning, a portion of the house and then eventually build up to owning their own home.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's so many different solutions that we create within our collaboration with the exchange and other ministries in order to solve real world problems. And so the size and the capacity of what's
Hmm.
about to happen in Nigeria is really exciting for us. Population of 225 million,
Hmm.
a growing population, average age is around 18 years old. So they're all young, they're all on
Hmm.
their phones, they're all into blockchain. It's really exciting.
Yeah, no, that's very exciting. And actually, I didn't think we get onto this, but in terms of property, when you have charges on properties when you're renting or when you have a stake in a property, you have to wait for that property to be sold to actually, even see the returns. Whereas obviously if it's tokenized, it'll be, listed and people can move on onto their next property investment, or if they're trying to build up to buy a house, put it into the next one. Yeah, I see what you're trying to say there, and it's really quite good. You've got a lot of agreements with exchanges. How many would you say, or how many public companies have stressed like, let me know when our exchange is on and when can we get on?
Yeah, so so we've got actually 4 exchanges that are lined up to go live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So this is NESD in Nigeria, Jamaica Stock Exchange, Eastern Caribbean Stock Exchange, which represents eight, 8 or 9 islands across the Caribbean, and Barbados Stock Exchange. So for whatever reason, all the regulators decided to give kind of the approvals
Yeah.
at the end of last year. So these are all these four exchanges are geared up to go live.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we're trying to do them, as quickly as possible,
Mm-hmm.
keeping in mind that it's not just about the exchange, it's the exchange, the brokers, the depository, the regulators
Mm-hmm.
all have to get in place, and then the issuers have to come in and prepare their prospectus. We're at the stage right now with the Eastern Caribbean Stock Exchange as well as the NESD in Nigeria. We've got about 5 issuers combined that are in the process of preparing the disclosure documents
Mm-hmm.
in order to be one of the first to go live on those exchanges.
Lovely. And then obviously you've got a big batch of exchanges there. Once they all fall into play as they already have, you might have another batch of exchanges all come on at the same time, and then therefore, that's leading on to sort of catalysts, which is another question I have. What other catalysts are there in the works? Is it just when you have these batches of exchanges all come on in one go?
Well, we've got another 12 exchanges in the pipelines with
Brilliant.
MOUs for different use cases. Some are commodities exchanges, some are carbon credit markets, some are traditional securities marketplaces. I'll say there's two I'll say there's two key catalysts I think right now that it's very interesting and can have a bulk effect.
Mm-hmm.
One catalyst just happened, and again, it's the SEC, and actually, it's kind of a perfect storm of different events that have come together and to catalyze a great opportunity for us right now.
Mm-hmm.
One is the SEC approving the Bitcoin ETFs because
Yeah.
it really just
Relaxed.
makes all the exchanges across the globe, because for us it's really about getting the market share of exchanges across the globe, right? It
Mm-hmm.
makes them all realize that this is moving forward.
Yeah.
There's nothing to worry about. Do it the right way with the right regulation, the right technology, and move forward.
Mm.
So all those conversations just became a lot easier.
Mhm. Even the health of Bitcoin, does that even help with those conversations? Like obviously if Bitcoin was still at like 15K or 20K right now, maybe it would be harder as well. I don't know.
You know, interestingly, I feel like it shouldn't, but the reality is it does,
Yeah.
right? That's just the reality. There's a sentiment there that for some reason it just cannot be disconnected. Another big catalyst is, you know, obviously all of these large organizations like BlackRock and everybody talking about the tokenization of real world assets. And
Hmm.
I gave the example of Nigeria.
Hmm.
uh, you know, huge population. It's probably the most amount of homes that need to be built in the world is in
Hmm.
Nigeria, and we're partnered with the exchange there. So tokenizing all that real estate is huge. And you know, when they pass these laws to force the requirement of affordable housing,
Hmm.
sustainability, all the sustainability development goals that that's encompassing the world right now. The whole world is moving forward with ESG, sustainability development. These things are all very helpful to us.
Hmm.
um, One of the key things as well is the carbon markets. So we have a unique perspective in terms of how the carbon markets should be run.
Hmm.
We've seen what happened with the crypto markets. Okay, we've seen different crypto markets pop up. They blow up like FTX. People could be at significant risk of loss of their money, and this is what happens when regulation takes too long to step in.
Hmm.
So with the carbon markets, it looks a little bit similar. It's not regulated in most places. There's a lot of different carbon markets that are popping up. And what you're going to find is that very similar to the crypto markets, you're going to find all kinds of issues starting to pop up. And so what we're proposing is that stock exchanges, because they're already self-regulated organizations, they're already running marketplaces, they should be the center of the carbon marketplaces. But it's not just individual stock exchange or individual country initiative. The Paris Agreement is about the globe, really. It's 200 countries have come together to try to, mitigate climate change. So it's really about all the stock exchanges in the different regions coming together to have a global carbon markets, right? And so when you do that, each exchange is playing their part to help their country meet their climate goals, but we're also making sure that it's a fair marketplace. When somebody buys a carbon credit in Europe for $80 and finds out that they could have bought it for $10 in Africa,
Hmm.
sometimes they might not feel so good about it.
No, not at
When
all.
you
Yeah.
when you connect the markets together, then you get price discovery, you get efficiencies.
Hmm.
And so what we've created is something where we can connect all the stock exchanges together on one platform. They get to keep their name, their broker dealer members, their revenue, their own listings, but all the markets are interconnected together utilizing the power of blockchain and our system.
Definitely sounds like a all-encompassing platform, even with the like sort of clearing and settlement of trades as well. Where does Blockstation make its revenue? And obviously, so we're talking about the listings, there's listing fees. Does it also make money on trades?
Yeah, so it definitely varies from one exchange to another. But we have essentially our setup fees. We have an annual SaaS fee, and then the most important for us is a revenue share. So we like to have a revenue share with the exchange, so that again, as you said, whether it's the listing fees, whether it's trading fees, whether it's annual broker fees, corporate action fees, we get a piece of all of those fees, on an ongoing basis. So this is really a long-term play for us.
Hmm.
We get these exchanges set up, center the financial markets, and we expect most of the activity to go there, including companies that wouldn't normally go public.
Hmm.
When you have the ability to do a tokenized IPO,
Yeah.
where it's a lot more cost effective, a lot more efficient, then suddenly all the things that a company might have looked at and said, you know what, I don't want to go public because maybe the naked short sellers are gonna destroy our stock. You don't have to worry about that when you're dealing with tokenized IPO on the stock exchange,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
blockchain prevents that.
Very, very good. Thank you very much. I mean, actually, one more question which I haven't got down, and we can edit out if you want, is it's obviously quite exciting. Do you need investment? Would people, are you still open to investments and maybe even tokenization of yourself or even IPOing yourselves? That would be quite amusing.
Yeah, no, definitely. We definitely want to do a tokenized IPO ourselves,
Hmm.
but we don't want to be one of the first on our own exchange
Yeah, yeah.
partners. After a couple, a number of listings go on to those exchanges, that's something that we definitely want to do.
Hmm.
Right now, we have just opened up a Series A round for $21 million. So we're just at the beginning of that round.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Jay. I think this has been a much more of an interview than I was expecting, and it's I've learned a lot, and I can see how transparent the blockchain is. So it's brilliant. Thank you very much, and we'll speak again
Thank
soon.
you.